Through the chair. So there has been quite a few questions around special education, and this is something that we have looked at, I don't even know how many different times, and even had a conversation with EAW today, because historically, throughout the nation, you always hear that we don't have enough special education educators. So when this budget deficit came to be, we looked at the current state. So I want you to look, zone your eyes in on what's in yellow. And this is specific to teachers or settings that we refer to as the inclusion setting, and the teacher is referred to as a TMSN, which up on top I have it spelled out, teachers of moderate to special needs children. And then I've got those questions on the side, because if you don't live in the world of special education, you hear all these different acronyms and trying to make this make sense. So we currently have TSMNs, and we have learning disabled classroom educators. These are people who work with our children with special needs. And what are the questions that typically are asked? So what is the service offered? Both of those types of teachers, if you will, or positions, I'm going to refer to them as positions. Both of those positions, the services are based on the IEP goals. So the goals define what the service the child will get. Where does the service happen? It depends on the IEP. So TMSNs can push into what's called the general education classroom. So you're a 5th grade student, you're assigned to Miss Mendez's class as a 5th grade student, and you have special ed services. The TMSN pushes into that classroom. We call that inclusion, full inclusion, and provide the services in there. But the TMSN also goes into the 4th grade classroom of Ms. Morse and pulls out 4th grade students to work on those IEP goals. TMSN does both. We call that partial inclusion here in Worcester. So we've got push in and we've got pull out done by the TMSN. If you look at the learning disabled position, also based on IEP goals, that is a pull out model only. Those IEP goals tend to be specified on reading, but I'm going to tell you that all IEP goals, I rarely come across a child who does not have an IEP goal for reading. So you can see that the setting changes slightly for learning disabled or TMSN. How many students might be served? This school year, we staff where if you're a TMSN, you might serve up to 45 students. That means you're bopping in and out of all kinds of classrooms all day long, probably making it really difficult to provide quality service. Now that varied by school because we did not have a good way of keeping track of caseloads. But when we staff at 45. When you look at the learning disabled position, the average caseload there, if you were an elementary learning disabled position, you had about 19 contacts you might have. If you were at the secondary, you would have on average 30. So you can see that a TMSN would have a lot more students to work with than a position that was learning disabled. How many paraprofessionals are assigned? If you're a TMSN, that is 1. If you are in the position of learning disabled, it depended on your caseload. And then finally, what is the staff, our current staffing? We currently have 173 staff in that TMSN position, and we have 42 in the learning disabled. The part I really want you to hone in on, and it's hard to see, is what's the required license for either one of those positions is exactly the same license. It is TMSN. So what we are recommending is that we make this, we write the size of the caseloads. We say all of them are TMSNs. They provide service based on the IEP. They can either push in or pull out based on the IEP. We actually are going to lessen the caseload for everybody so that it'll be 30 because we can keep the same number of staff. We're going to give them an additional paraprofessional because that's still a lot to be able to manage those schedules. And We currently can do that with 172, and you can see that we already had 173 on the TMSN, and they have the license they need in order to be able to do that. What we had learned through digging into this process, identifying some unintended redundancies, a few months ago when we presented on the school committee, to the school committee about special education, I think it was member Mailman who asked, how did we get here? And one of the things that I shared is many times special education educators will take everything on because they're so incredibly caring and they are worried about their children. And they will take on responsibilities and take on more than they should because others are allowing them to, but then things become siloed. This is an example of things becoming siloed. I don't think people realize that the learning disabled position does exactly the same thing that the TMSN position can do with training. And so when we look at the number of people that we have in TMSN, we can provide the same exact services. We can ensure that everyone has that training. We can make sure IEP goals are met. We can give more paraprofessionals to those TMSNs, and we can do that with less staff for the entire district, for the same number of children, for the same number of minutes. When we get to that part of the agenda or the budget, we're happy to call up Dr. Murray and Ms. Kramer to speak to the work that they've done on looking at the minutes. But I can assure you, we would not be making any kind of recommendation to reducing any kind of teaching position in the special ed world if we didn't feel like we could meet those services. We would be setting the district up for huge liability, and I would not recommend doing that. So I hope this gives some more clarity on what our current state is and where we found some redundancies. And it's not a finger pointing, it came over time. And we want to fix it so that when we have more funds that come in the future, we can provide different kind of programming for our children. We can really work on facilities improvement. We can do some other things as well.